From Microbe TV, this is TWIV, This Week in Virology, episode 641, recorded on July 16th, 2020. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and you're listening to the podcast all about viruses. Joining me today from Austin, Texas, Rich Condit.
Hi there, Vincent. Good to be here.
And our very special guest today is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Welcome back.
Thanks, Vincent. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Rich.
You were last on TWIV in 2013. Boy, things have changed, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
So we wanted to ask you a bunch of science questions about SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19, and we've put them in little sections. And this first section is all about transmission and testing. And I wonder if I could start by asking what your thoughts are on the relative contributions of what we know are the three routes of transmission: droplets, aerosol, and contact.
Yeah. I don't think, Vince, that there's really firm data. There's the assumption that it's mostly droplets. Just recently there's been a buzz about the degree of aerosol and what that really means. It's almost impossible to be able to determine, except when you have an event. You might recall very well the famous hotel in Hong Kong with SARS, where we had infections that went up and down vertically and across the courtyard to the other hotel. I mean, that's a surefire aerosol if there ever was one. But when you have both droplet and regular aerosol, it's tough to distinguish the two. I would think, as an intelligent guess, that it is almost a very large majority of it is the standard aerosol, whereas if you the standard droplet, which is if you stay 6 feet or more away, it's unlikely that the droplet will reach you. But I would not rule out the possibility that there is a degree of aerosol, the extent of which I don't know. Surfaces, we know it can stay on surfaces, hard enamel, steel, plastic, more than corrugated cotton material and things like that. A study that was done by Vincent Munster from the Rocky Mountain Labs showed about 48 to 72 hours on surfaces, but that's PCRable. We're not so sure if it's replication competent. So that's another thing that's kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
So no firm information on what we're talking about.
So do you have any feeling for like the relative contribution of direct droplet transmission and surface mediated, fomite mediated?
I don't, but if you look at the circumstances of when crowds are together, you would imagine it's mostly droplet. And I'm sure if somebody coughs into the hand and opens a door, if somebody comes 15 minutes later and opens the same door, that it's a good chance you're going to get transmission. But I would think that it's, again, if you compare surface to droplet, I would go with droplet predominant.
It seems to me this is important because it speaks to the effectiveness of masks.
Right. Exactly.
All right. There have been a number of reports of patients who shed viral RNA for weeks, as determined by PCR. It doesn't seem to be infectious virus. And the real question is, are they a threat for transmission? And I'm wondering if you think we could use a cutoff of viral loads determined by PCR to say this patient is no longer infectious, can go home, can go to a nursing facility. Because right now the physicians are really having a hard time with that.
Right. Again, a good question. And what is now sort of evolving into a bit of a standard that if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. So that if somebody, and we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. Somebody comes in and they repeat their PCR and it's like 37 cycle threshold. But you almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period.
Mm. Yeah, because as you know, we can't easily culture infectious virus. You don't have a BSL-3 lab everywhere.
Exactly.
It's a problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
So is the threshold cycle is reporting out a pretty standard practice in doing a diagnosis now rather than just positive or negative? Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, if when you go in, when I get my test, it's negative. When someone comes in and it's positive, they don't give them the threshold until you go back and ask for it.
Okay, but they've got it.
They've got it.
All right.
They've got it.
So, what's your current perspective on the fraction of transmission now that's either asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic versus symptomatic?